You wake up in the morning and the first thing you do before brushing your teeth, before drinking water, is check your phone. Notifications, messages, someone liked your post, someone didn't reply, someone's life looks perfect, and just like that, your attention is already outside of you, already focused on others. You scroll and scroll, subtly comparing, judging, reacting. You think it's harmless, but inside you're being drained, pulled away from yourself, little by little, and before you know it, your day is shaped not by your own values, but by the noise of everyone else's life. Now ask yourself this: when was the last time you truly sat with yourself? No distractions, no outside opinions, just you, your thoughts, your truth. If that question feels uncomfortable, if silence feels like a stranger, you're not alone. Most people are terrified of turning inward, and that fear keeps them stuck in a cycle of self-neglect and comparison. This video is about that cycle and how to break it. We're diving deep into a truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. If you don't focus on yourself, you will always be at the mercy of the world around you. You will be ruled by other people's success, opinions, love, rejection, drama, praise, criticism, and none of it will ever truly satisfy you, because none of it is you. The most powerful shift you can make in life, the one that changes everything, is this: stop focusing on others. Start focusing on yourself. This is not about becoming selfish. It's about becoming whole, about coming home to your inner life. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." And he was right. Real growth begins the moment you redirect your energy inward, the moment you stop waiting for someone else to validate your worth, the moment you stop measuring your life by someone else's timeline. In the next 30 to 40 minutes, we're going on a journey, not the kind with maps or directions, but the kind that asks you to look inward, to listen deeply, to question what you've been chasing, and to reclaim something sacred, your focus. Because your focus is your life. What you give attention to, you give energy to. And most of us have been giving our energy to everything but ourselves. We've been programmed to live outwardly, to perform, compare, and please. But now it's time to do the opposite, to slow down, to return, to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. So take a deep breath. This is your invitation, not to escape, but to wake up. Not to fix everything, but to begin seeing clearly. Because once you see, you can never unsee. Once you remember, you can never forget. In this video, we'll explore why we lose ourselves in others and how to find our way back. We'll talk about how society shapes our attention, how childhood experiences program our focus, and how modern life is designed to keep us distracted. We'll break down the subtle ways we abandon ourselves and give you the tools to start coming back. And we'll keep it simple. No jargon, no fluff, just real talk, practical insights, and honest reflections. Because healing doesn't come from complexity, it comes from clarity, from finally telling yourself the truth. By the end of this video, you'll understand why self-focus is not selfish. It's essential. Why boundaries aren't walls, they're doors to deeper self-respect. And why your energy is your most valuable currency, and it's time to invest it where it truly matters. You'll leave this video not with a to-do list, but with a shift in perspective. One that changes the way you wake up in the morning, the way you carry yourself through the day, the way you speak to yourself when no one's watching. This is not a motivational speech. It's a wake-up call. Because you don't need more motivation, you need reconnection with your truth, with your depth, with a quiet voice inside that says, "I'm tired of performing. I want to be real." So if you're ready to stop living on autopilot, if you're tired of feeling like your life belongs to everyone but you, then you're in the right place. Let's begin. Let's start with something simple but powerful: awareness. You cannot change what you don't see. And most of us don't even realize how much of our attention is hijacked, how much of our energy is consumed by watching, worrying, comparing, reacting. It becomes automatic. We scroll through social media, we track other people's progress, we gossip, we judge, not because we're bad people, but because we've been trained to focus outward from the very beginning. As children, we learned that attention equals safety, that if we focused on what others expected of us, we would be loved. If we behaved the right way, we'd get approval. So, we adapted. We became observers of others and forgot how to observe ourselves. We learned to survive in a world that demanded our focus to be everywhere, but inward. And as we grow, this habit becomes a lifestyle. We measure our success by someone else's standards. We shape our identity based on who others want us to be. We numb our inner voice just to keep up with the noise. But here's the hard truth. If your energy is scattered across the lives of other people, you have nothing left for your own. And that's why you feel lost. That's why you feel anxious, unfulfilled, behind. Because you're not living your life, you're living a reaction to everyone else's. So how do we shift? How do we begin to focus inward? It starts with asking better questions. Not what are they doing, but what am I doing? Not do they like me, but do I like me? Not how can I catch up, but where am I rushing to and why? These questions are uncomfortable. They challenge the ego. They break the cycle of distraction. But they are necessary. Because clarity doesn't come from more information. It comes from better reflection. Jung spoke about individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, not who the world wants you to be. And individuation is not possible if you're constantly chasing other people's lives. It requires solitude, stillness, focus. It requires looking at yourself not as a project to fix, but as a being to understand. So take a moment, right now, pause, ask yourself, where is my focus going? What am I feeding with my attention? What patterns am I repeating, and why? These aren't questions you need to answer right away, but the more you sit with them, the more you'll begin to see. You'll notice how often you scroll to escape, how often you look outside for permission, how rarely you sit with your emotions instead of avoiding them. And that's the beginning of healing. Not fixing everything at once, but finally seeing the truth without judgment. Here's something important to remember. You are not behind. You are not late. You are simply distracted, and distraction makes you forget that your life has always been trying to speak to you through your body, your emotions, your quiet longings. But to hear that voice, you have to stop tuning into everyone else's. So let's talk about focus. Focus is not just about attention. It's about values. What you focus on is what you value, consciously or not. If you spend your energy on drama, validation, comparison, it's not because you want to. It's because you haven't redefined your values yet. You're running on old programming. And that's okay. That's how most of us start. But at some point you have to choose. You have to say, my peace matters more than their approval. My growth matters more than staying in the loop. My presence matters more than being right. That's what focusing on yourself looks like. It's not ego, it's integrity. It's saying no to what drains you, not because you're better than others, but because you're finally honoring your energy. And as you do this, something amazing happens. You begin to come alive again. You start hearing your own thoughts more clearly. You start trusting your gut. You start remembering what you loved before the world told you to be useful, productive, impressive. That's the path back to yourself. And it's not flashy. It doesn't get applause. It's quiet. It's internal. But it's real, and it lasts. Because when you stop giving your attention away to everyone else, you create space. Space to feel, space to heal, space to grow. And that space becomes your sanctuary, your inner home. So if you've been feeling empty, it's not because you lack something, it's because you've been giving too much away. You need to rebuild, not by adding more, but by returning to less. Less noise, less distraction, less performing, more listening, more stillness, more honesty. You are not a product of the world's expectations. You are a reflection of your own awareness, and that awareness is always waiting for you, patiently, silently. So start today. Start small. Turn your phone off for 10 minutes and just sit. Not to meditate, not to do anything, just to be. Notice what comes up. Notice what you want to escape. And instead of escaping, stay. Breathe through it. Be with yourself. That's how trust is rebuilt. Not in grand gestures, but in consistent presence. You with you. Nothing to fix, nothing to perform, just presence. And remember, focusing on yourself is not a destination. It's a daily practice, a returning, over and over again. Not because you're broken, but because you're worth coming home to. When you begin to consistently focus on yourself, the world starts to feel different. Not because the world changed, but because you did. And this shift is subtle at first. You might notice that some things no longer pull your attention. Drama feels heavier. Gossip feels meaningless. Even certain people in your life begin to feel like echoes of your old self, not companions for your growth. This can be painful, but it's also powerful. Because when you commit to focusing on yourself, some relationships will naturally fade. And that's okay. Not everyone is meant to go with you. Some people were only aligned with the version of you that stayed distracted. When you start choosing clarity, calm, and conscious growth, those who thrive on chaos may not understand. That's not rejection, that's redirection. You don't need everyone to understand your path. You just need the courage to walk it. Let's talk about one of the biggest challenges on this path: comparison. We are constantly being told what success looks like, what beauty looks like, what happiness should be. And without realizing it, we start measuring ourselves against other people's timelines, lifestyles, and values. But comparison is a thief, not just of joy, but of direction. It pulls you away from your unique path and convinces you that your journey is invalid if it doesn't look like someone else's. But here's the truth: there is no one path, no universal timeline, no single definition of success or meaning. You are not behind, you are simply on your own journey. And the moment you reclaim that truth, you begin to experience real freedom. So instead of comparing, start observing with curiosity, not judgment. Notice what makes you feel alive. Notice what drains you. Notice what you do because you love it versus what you do because you think you should. This self-honesty is where growth begins. And when you're honest with yourself, even the small decisions become transformational. Saying no to a plan you don't want to be part of. Saying yes to a creative idea that's been on your heart for years. Spending a quiet weekend alone, not because you're antisocial, but because your soul needs space to breathe. These are not selfish acts. They are sacred. They are signals to your nervous system that you're safe with yourself again, that you no longer need to betray your own needs just to belong. This is how you begin to rewrite your story from the inside out. Now let's talk about inner dialogue. The way you speak to yourself matters more than anything. Because even if you turn your focus inward, if your inner voice is still critical, harsh, unforgiving, then you're just replacing external judgment with internal judgment. And that doesn't lead to healing, that leads to burnout. So the next phase of focusing on yourself is learning to speak kindly, patiently, compassionately to yourself. Not perfectly, but honestly, with grace. Instead of, "I'm failing," try, "I'm learning." Instead of, "I should be further by now," try, "I'm exactly where I need to be to understand the lesson." Instead of, "Why do I keep messing up?" try, "What is this pattern trying to show me?" Language is powerful. It shapes how we see ourselves, and how we see ourselves determines how we live. So slow down. Speak to yourself like someone you love, because your inner voice is either building you or breaking you every single day. And now, let's go even deeper. Focusing on yourself also means reclaiming your emotional space. Many of us have been trained to suppress, to numb, to escape. But your emotions are not the enemy. They are messages. Anger is a boundary being crossed. Sadness is a need not being met. Anxiety is a signal that you're out of alignment with something in your life. When you focus inward, you begin to decode these messages instead of avoiding them. You learn to sit with discomfort without judgment. You learn to ask, "What is this emotion trying to teach me?" instead of, "How do I get rid of it?" And in doing so, you stop running from yourself. You stop fearing your own depth. You realize that you are not too much, not too broken, not too emotional. You are human, and your inner world is rich with information if you're willing to listen. One of the most empowering things you can do is to stop outsourcing your worth, to stop looking for someone else to validate your pain, your path, your pace. You don't need a crowd to heal. You don't need applause to grow. You don't need permission to rest, to change, to evolve. You just need to trust that your inner compass, your intuition, is enough. And that compass gets clearer the more you stop chasing the noise and start honoring your stillness. Stillness is not laziness. It's medicine. It's where clarity is born. And in a world that glorifies speed, choosing stillness is revolutionary. So let yourself slow down. Focus not on doing more, but on being more present, more intentional, more you. Because you're not here to perform. You're here to live. And life begins when you stop watching others and start returning to yourself. Remember, this isn't a quick fix. It's not a 30-day challenge. It's a lifelong relationship with yourself. And like any relationship, it requires care, attention, forgiveness, and time. There will be days when you slip back into old habits. That's okay. That's part of the journey. Progress is not linear. Healing is not a straight line. What matters is that you keep coming back. Coming back to your breath. Coming back to your truth. Coming back to what matters to you. Not what's trending, not what's expected, not what's applauded. Just you, with you. Because when you live from that place, you become unshakable. Not because life gets easier, but because you stop abandoning yourself when it gets hard. And that is true strength. Quiet, powerful, lasting. You are not here to fix others. You are not here to prove yourself. You are here to live fully, deeply, honestly. And that begins the moment you decide, I will focus on myself, not because I'm selfish, but because I'm finally ready to come home. When you focus on yourself instead of others, something interesting happens. You stop living on autopilot. You begin to notice how many of your thoughts, choices, even emotions weren't really yours. They were shaped by parents, peers, social media, the culture around you, and without even realizing it, you were living someone else's script. But focusing on yourself is how you begin to rewrite that script, line by line. You begin to ask deeper questions. Not what do they expect from me, but what do I truly want? Not how should I look, but what makes me feel alive in my body? Not what will make them approve, but what brings me closer to peace. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It's a process of unlearning just as much as learning. It requires patience, but most of all, it requires presence. Because presence is the antidote to distraction. And distraction is what keeps us tied to other people's lives. Let's talk about social media for a moment. We scroll endlessly, looking into the lives of others. Highlight reels, curated images, polished versions of truth. And while there's nothing inherently wrong with sharing moments, we often forget that we're comparing our behind the scenes to someone else's movie trailer. That comparison distorts reality. You might be building something beautiful slowly, silently, and still feel like you're not doing enough. Not because you aren't, but because someone else's loudness is drowning out your stillness. This is why boundaries are so important, not just with people, but with content, with energy, with time. Set boundaries around what you consume. Ask yourself regularly, is this feeding me or draining me? Set boundaries around your time. Give your best hours to your own life, not just to watching others live theirs. Set boundaries around your energy. Stop pouring into every conversation, every argument, every invitation. Choose wisely. Choose you. And here's something else. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means choosing relationships that reflect your growth, not your fears. You don't have to do this alone, but you do have to be intentional. Surround yourself with people who challenge your thinking, support your vision, and respect your silence. Not just those who keep you comfortable, but those who help you grow. And sometimes growth means losing people. This is hard, especially if you're used to being the one who gives, supports, holds space for everyone else. But your healing requires you to hold space for yourself first. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot be everything to everyone if you are nothing to yourself. Self-focus is not neglecting others. It's choosing wholeness over performance, depth over appearances, reality over illusion. And when you make this choice, you begin to realize how much of your pain was rooted in self-abandonment. Times you said yes when you wanted to say no. Times you stayed quiet to keep the peace. Times you betrayed your own needs to feel wanted. These moments are not failures. They're invitations. Each one is asking you, are you ready to choose yourself now? Because choosing yourself isn't a one-time act, it's a daily decision. It's in the boundaries you set. It's in the words you speak to yourself. It's in the way you treat your time, your energy, your body. You begin to realize that everything you used to seek outside, validation, love, clarity, it all begins within. And yes, healing this way can feel lonely at first, but eventually, the loneliness fades and is replaced with something deeper, solitude. And solitude is sacred. In solitude, you remember who you are. In solitude, you hear your own voice again. In solitude, you meet your real self, not the one shaped by fear or approval, but the one that's been waiting to be seen. Let's talk about self-trust. When you focus on yourself, you start building trust with the only person you're guaranteed to be with for life. You. But trust doesn't come from big gestures, it comes from consistency. Keeping your promises to yourself, saying what you mean, acting in alignment with your values, even when no one's watching. That's what builds inner confidence. Quietly, steadily, authentically. And confidence isn't arrogance. It's not about thinking you're better than others. It's about no longer needing to compare yourself to others at all. Because you're rooted. When you're rooted in who you are, external opinions lose their power. Criticism doesn't shatter you. Praise doesn't define you. You listen, but you don't lose yourself. This kind of strength doesn't scream, it whispers. It says, I know who I am, even when others don't. It says, I don't need to be loud to be clear. It says, my worth is not up for negotiation. And from that place, everything changes. You begin to live more intentionally. You make choices from alignment, not obligation. You stop chasing. You start creating. You stop reacting. You start responding. And slowly, your life becomes a reflection of who you truly are, not who you've been told to be. So what does it actually look like to focus on yourself in daily life? It's waking up and checking in with yourself before you check your phone. It's creating more than you consume. It's taking care of your health, not for aesthetics, but for vitality. It's having hard conversations, not to win, but to grow. It's spending time alone, not because you have to, but because you want to. It's investing in your dreams even when no one else sees the vision yet. It's choosing presence over performance. And it's doing all of this, not because you're trying to prove something, but because you finally realize you are worthy, with or without anyone's permission. This is the journey back to yourself. And it starts not with a grand plan, but with one small, honest choice. So take a breath, get still. Ask yourself, what do I need today? What would support me right now? What would honoring myself look like in this moment? Then do that. Just one thing. Because every time you choose yourself, you teach your nervous system that you are safe. You teach your mind that you are trustworthy. You teach your heart that you are home. And that's the foundation of real healing. Not chasing the next thing, but returning to the only place that matters, here, now, with you.